going to talk to KT McFarland. We'll just put it on hold, KT. Don't worry. No wiener questions.
Put in the coffee this morning.
No. That's always a little good question for this show. Hey, listen, I want to talk to you about Benghazi. You know, Fox News has been on the forefront of investigating the Benghazi issue. The only news organization, really, that has continued to ask really hard questions about Benghazi. And yesterday, there was this from Jay Carney when talking about Benghazi.
Some phony scandals that have captured the attention of many here in Washington, only to dissipate.
So, when you hear Jay Carney, he's talking about Benghazi and the IRS investigation, by the way. But when you hear Benghazi dismissed like that as a fake or phony scandal that has dissipated, what's your reaction?
I think it's just the height of desperate cynicism. You know, the more evidence we get about Benghazi and what happened, and there is more evidence coming out as people directly involved are talking, it's pretty clear that the leadership in the White House, you know, lied, covered up, and Americans died. And there's still been no accounting for it. What I'm stunned with is not why Fox News continues to pursue it, but why the mainstream media doesn't seem to care at all, and why the American public refuses to hold this administration responsible for not one, two, but dozens of scandals. I mean, at what point does somebody take the eye patch off and say, oh my gosh, look what's here?
Well, forget about the mainstream media. I mean, it doesn't seem like John Boehner and the House Republicans care, other than, Virginia's own Frank Wolf seems to be one of the lone voices. But do you think it would be helpful, KT McFarland, for the Republicans in the House to actually have a special committee at this point, as has been the norm in the past for stories like this, to actually utilize the subpoena power that they have and actually get to the bottom of this?
Yes. I think it does for a number of reasons. One, for the soul of America, frankly. I mean, when we let people die, when people were abandoned, when the White House was busy worrying about the talking points and the spin, while Americans were standing on the roof of a consulate being gunned down, hoping that someone would rescue them, when Americans military were ready to rescue them and were told to stand down. I want to know why, because if our government is unwilling to come to the aid of people like that, who are they going to come to the aid of? Is it just that cynical? No, I feel that there should be a special commission, and I think it should have full subpoena powers, and it should rip back the veil of what really went on that night.
Well, what's going to happen with the United States and with regard to Syria?
I sure hope somebody's listening to General Dempsey, because he made very clear in terms that I've not seen a military officer make public what the consequences would be at every stage of a graduated involvement. He gave 5 options of what the United States could do to help the Syrian rebels. Every one of them looked to me like it was headed for a disaster. So I think General Dempsey has laid it out pretty clearly. Here are the risks. Here's what's likely to happen. And if we go forward with any of this, I think, tragically and sadly, General Dempsey's predictions will come true.
Well, what do you get the sense of it, where this administration might be headed? I mean, they seem to feel that they have to do something.
Well, that's the problem. You know, when there's something wrong in the world, the original and sort of endearing American reaction is, we got to do something, we got to do something, without then taking a sober look and saying, well, what should we do? What are our goals? What's our mission? How are our forces that we would send to that mission, achieve that mission? Haven't we learned anything after Iraq and Afghanistan? To jump in, or Libya, certainly Libya is probably the better example. You jump in, do something, and then what comes later is far worse than what you jumped in to fix.
KT McFarland, all right, now Brian said that we were going to leave the Anthony Weiner story alone, but I didn't, so I got to ask.
Because, you're going to do
that? No,
there.
well, only because you know that, like, KT, you ran for Senate in the state of New York. You know that state. You understand the politics in the state of New York. Does this guy have any possibility of actually winning this race in New York?
Probably, tragically, he does.
Oh.
However, to watch what happened yesterday, to me, was just the battered wife syndrome. I mean, it was just painful to see. Not what he did. You know, he's a complete narcissist. I've debated him before. I've known him. It's just he's got issues that ought to keep him on the psychiatrist's couch for hours a day. But the sadness was to see what his wife endured, and that he seemed to be completely oblivious to what he was doing to his wife. I think for somebody like that, I'm not sure we want somebody with that kind of mental instability in the mayor's.
Yeah, thank you. Imagine, what do we think of when we think of the mayor of New York? We think of Rudy Giuliani at the helm during the 9/11 tragedy. Can you imagine this guy, Anthony Weiner, taking the lead at a moment of national panic like that? It's insane.
Well, you call him a narcissist. I mean, what is it that drives a guy to be so desperate to be out of power for just a few months that he just can't stand the fact that he doesn't have any kind of elected office behind his name?
There are so many screws loose in that head, it's hard to think of what drives it.
All right, well, maybe we can talk about some other loose screws out there, especially with the fact that President Obama has announced that the fact that Edward Snowden, public enemy number one, the man who is, one of the most dangerous men in the world because of what he did in exposing the NSA surveillance, he's seeking refuge in Russia, and the president now is going to go ahead with his planned visit to Russia. Don't you think the president should take a harsher stand here?
Yeah, I think it's time to put the boxing gloves on. The problem with dealing with the Russians is they're a very transactional approach. It's always tit for tat. We passed that Magnitsky Act, denying visas for Russians involved in the persecution and murder of a Russian whistleblower. How did they respond? By saying Americans can't adopt Russian orphans. We may want to behave differently, and the Obama administration may want to, and President Obama may have thought that canceling that planned missile shield for Poland and the Czech Republic and his offer to reset relations with Russia was going to work because they would reciprocate our grand gesture. They just don't do that. And so I think it's better to understand they don't do that, and how should we deal with them over Snowden? Don't cancel that G20 meeting, and don't make an announcement that you're going to cancel that meeting unless you've got 18 countries on board to go along with you, because you don't want to say something and not be able to carry it out. At a minimum, the president should not go to Moscow to meet with Putin, especially not while Snowden is sitting in that airport. And the president, there's a number of things he could do. Here's the thing. Putin has been waiting for this moment. He's now the big cheese. He's got the G20 in Moscow. Russia, it's proof to the world and to the Russian people that they're back as a superpower again. It's time to rain on that parade. There could be. Why doesn't the president go visit Poland on the way to St. Petersburg? Talk to the Poles about maybe reestablishing a much closer military relationship. There's a lot the president could do other than just go hat in hand to the Russians.
All right. KT McFarland, Fox News national security analyst, host of Fox News.com's DEFCON 3 show, which can be seen 1 p.m. Wednesdays at live.foxnews.com. And you're speaking at the Western Conservative Summit in Denver on Friday. The topic? What is the topic?
The topic is restoring America's leadership role in the world.
Well,
who better than KT McFarland? She's been there for years. That's great. And by the way, nice time of year to be in Denver. You pulled a good one there.
Thanks, KT.